Today we'll be drafting and sewing a simple, easy to fit t-shirt. You'll need 80 centimeters to 1 meter of jersey fabric. It depends on the size. The fabric should be 145 to 160 centimeters wide. There is minimum ease in the t-shirt. It's easy to change the design and adapt the fit. Jersey fabric will stretch and drape around the body. You can make it long or short sleeved, sleeveless, or by cutting it just below the waistline and adding a circle skirt, you can sew a super easy and comfortable dress. It can be sewn on an overlocker or a domestic sewing machine with a stretch stitch, such as a small zigzag. The hem can be cover stitched, or you can use a double needle on your domestic sewing machine. To draft the pattern, you will need your measurements, your bust circumference, the length from the nape of your neck to your waist, your back width, your sleeve length, your neck size, your arm side depth, and your wrist circumference. You'll need some paper, a pencil, a ruler, if you have any curves or a French curve or a pattern maker, that will be helpful, and a measuring tape. Use the same measuring tape to measure yourself. We're going to draft our front and our back together. So we'll start with the body sections. First, mark your neck point or the nape of your neck point and square across from the neck point and down from the neck point. So basically a vertical and a horizontal line from the neck point. By the way, we are using a standard or fashion industry method. It's a flat cut, close fit, easily adaptable top or bodice. Okay, so from the nape of your neck on your vertical line, go down the length of your top, the desired length of your top. You can add the hem allowance, 2.5 centimeters or 1 inch, or if you don't, remember to add it later. A standard would be 58 centimeters, but that's up to you. And of course, draw a horizontal line there at the hem. And then mark your neck to waist length plus 0.5 centimeter on the vertical line. So for me it's going to be 38 centimeters plus 0.5 centimeter equals 38.5. For most people it's going to be 42 centimeters. For most women it's going to be 42 centimeters. Okay, so draw a horizontal line across the point and mark it with a W, for example. It's going to be your waist line. Then on the same vertical line, mark your arm side line or your arm side depth minus 1 centimeter. So for example, for me it's going to be 17 centimeters minus 1 equals 16 centimeters. And of course, draw a horizontal line across this point and mark it as your arm side line or A. Then divide the neck to arm side length by 2. So for example, for me 16 divided by 2 equals 8, and draw a horizontal line through that point. So on your vertical line mark 8 centimeters for me, or half of your neck to arm side length, and draw a horizontal line. This is our auxiliary line. It's going to help us in drafting the sleeve and the armhole. Then divide the half of the neck to arm side length, the one that you've just used, by 8. So for me 8 centimeters divided by 8 equals 1 centimeter. Mark the one closest to the neck point line, the 1/8 closest to the neckline on your pattern. On the neck horizontal line, measure 1/6 of your neck circumference and add 1 centimeter to it. So 36 for me divided by 6 equals 6, plus 1 equals 7 centimeters. Go up from this point 1.3, 1.5 centimeters and draw in a neck curve. It's a gentle curve, flat from the center back, so at least 2.5 centimeters from the middle is completely flat. On the arm side horizontal line, mark half of your back width minus 1 centimeter. So for me 32 divided by 2 minus 1 equals, well, that's 16 minus 1, 15 centimeters for me. Draw a vertical line from this point up. From this point where we stopped on our auxiliary line, go 1 centimeter to your right. this is where our shoulder line will end. You can now draw in the shoulder line. So for me, for example, my shoulder slope is going to be about 2 centimeters, precisely 2 centimeters 3 millimeters, because my armhole goes up 1.3 and then down 1 centimeter. See that I put the auxiliary line there. So this is 1 centimeter for me, and from there I'm going up to my shoulder. This is important because the shoulders are very, very important. So where your vertical armhole line is, you've got 1 centimeter to your right on the dashed line. I'm probably over explaining it, but it's quite important. And well, you can draft your shoulder line now. And we can go back to our arm side horizontal line. On this line, mark your 1/4 of the bust circumference. So 1/4 of your bust circumference minus 1 centimeter. So for example, for me, it's going to be 84 divided by 4 minus 1 equals 20 centimeters. And now you can draw a vertical auxiliary line down from this point to the hemline through the waistline. And now we can draw in the arm side curve. This is not something very easy, so you might want to do it in pencil a few times till you are happy, till you are satisfied. There are going to be points that help you. So you've got the top of the shoulder, that's the first line, then the middle line, the half of your arm side, and finally the bottom where the side seam starts. And now on the waistline, mark 2 centimeters from the auxiliary side seam line to the left. Draw in the side seam, curving gently from the armhole through the waist point that you've just marked to the hem. The 2 centimeters inside on the waistline is going to create a gentle curve. Do not go further, do not go beyond that. And in here, any tools that you've got, like a French curve or a pattern maker, can be useful. And our bodice is pretty much ready. All we need to do is, just for the front, change the neckline, because we've got the back and the front together. So the back has its neckline, but we need the front neckline. And for that, we're going to use 1/6 of our neck circumference again, and take away 1/2 centimeter. So this is how much we can go down. So for me, it's going to be 6 centimeters minus 1/2 centimeter equals 5.5 centimeters. I'm going down 5.5 centimeters, and I'm drawing in the front neck curve. And of course, you can change the neckline later. You can make it deeper, you can make it whatever you want. But this is going to be my bodice block. So I'm going to use standards, and then I can modify the pattern as much as I want. I also have to add seam allowances because my block hasn't got seam allowances. But for now we can put it away. We're not going to use it, well, we are going to use it to draft the sleeve, but we need a new piece of paper for the sleeve, and we're going to use the measurements from our block to draft the sleeve. Always make a sleeve to the pattern that you've made, to the bodice pattern that you've made. Our sleeves are always going to be based on the bodice that we've drafted. Let's draw a vertical line, the length of our sleeve plus 2 centimeters. So for me it's going to be 57 plus 2 centimeters equals 59 centimeters. And now we are going to need our pattern again, because we are going to measure things on the pattern. So mark half of your arm side depth plus 1/2 centimeter from the pattern. So for me it's going to be 8 centimeters plus 1/2 centimeter equals 8.5 centimeters. I'm going to mark that from the top of your vertical sleeve line, and we are going to draw a horizontal line across this point. As this is a flat cut pattern, the sleeve is really simple. You can't get a simpler sleeve. And we're going to need our bodice pattern once again. So measure top to bottom armhole on the pattern and use this measurement plus 1/2 centimeter to draw a line, an auxiliary line. For me it's going to be 16 centimeters. I hope you can see that. So measure between the points from the top of your shoulder, the end of your shoulder, to the end of the armhole where the side seam starts. And for me it's going to be 16 centimeters. For you it might be whatever it is. But the same measurement is going to be used on our sleeve button and mark it from the top of your sleeve to the end of the head. And you can put a straight line in pencil. I am actually going to draft it in pencil for you to see. So that straight line here is 16 centimeters for me, or the length of your armhole that you've just measured from one point to the other is there. And we need to divide this line into 3 equal parts. So for me, each third is going to be 5 centimeters, 3 millimeters, 5 and a bit. And we're going to create the curves. So I'm going down by 6 millimeters, so half a centimeter, 6 millimeters to be precise, from the point close to the bottom. And then from the point close to the top, we are going up 2 centimeters. You can draw some lines or curves or whatever to help you there. I hope you can see it very well, because it's not the easiest thing to explain without visual aid. So basically we're going up at the top and down at the bottom. 2 centimeters up at the top, 6 millimeters down at the bottom. And we can draw in the sleeve head hollowing the curve. So 6 millimeters near the bottom, and we are curving it up near the top, about 2 centimeters near the top. And again, because curves are not that easy, you might want to do it in pencil a few times just to check how it goes. Remember that the sleeve head can't be smaller than your armhole. It needs to fit into the armhole, and you can ease it in, but you can't add the fabric to the sleeve head. So don't be stingy with your drafting. Okay, we can do the rest of the sleeve now. So mark half of your wrist circumference plus 1 centimeter on the sleeve hemline. So for me it's going to be 7 centimeters plus 1, 8 centimeters. And we can then draw in the underarm seam. And I'm not adding any seam allowances to my slopers, so I will add seam allowances to the patterns that are going to be created using this sloper. But we need to label everything, because we are not going to remember. So we're going to label what it is, how to cut it out, when we made it, what size it is, that it has or hasn't got seam allowances. All the information, the more the better really. And then we can cut it out, and I'm going to speed up my cutting out process because you know how to do that. And I'm going to also check if my sleeve fits into the armhole. So I'm going to check if it's not too short, if the head is not too short and maybe it needs adding a few millimeters at the top. Remember that you can always ease it in. Well, mine is just right, so I'm probably not going to add anything. But I'm going to copy my back and make a front out of it, because the neckline is changed, and to make patterns I need both the back and the front. So I'm going to cut out the back with the front neckline. I'm going to make all the notches, all the markings. I'm going to label it as well, because as I can see they are not labeled, or not everything is labeled. And I can add the seam allowances, cut it out in some cheap fabric to check if it fits, make a muslin basically. And if it fits, it's perfect. If it needs some adjustments, you can then make adjustments. Mine was fine. I've changed the sleeve slightly later. So red paisley one is my muslin, basically, the one that you saw at the beginning of the video. But now we can make a basic short sleeve. We're going to use the long sleeve that we've just drafted without the seam allowances, still without the seam allowances. And for the short sleeve, we basically mark the length of the sleeve and we taper down 1.5 centimeter from the armhole, and we draw a slightly curved seam. So copy your basic sleeve to the length that you desire. For me it's going to be 13 centimeters. Then mark the hemline at the point of 12 or 13 or 15 centimeters for the short sleeve, and mark 1.5 centimeters at the bottom, and then taper down. This is going to be our side seam for the short sleeve, and that's it. We can cut it out, we can label it, we can add seam allowances, and we've got a short sleeve. And one of the black t-shirts that I'm wearing at the beginning of the video is with a short sleeve, so you can see how it looks like. And I'm also making a sleeveless top, and I'm going to show you how I cut it out on the fabric. So for now, no more pattern making. I'm using viscose jersey, which is really thin and really flimsy, and black, which is probably not the best for the video. I've got all my pattern pieces, and my bodice has seam allowances added. That's the white one. So as you can see, I added seam allowances. I added 8 millimeters of seam allowance. I tend to cut out 1 millimeter when I sew on the overlocker. I am going to sew on the overlocker. I'm not adding anything to the bodice because everything is there. So I'm cutting out the front and the back and making all the notches that I had marked on the pattern, and then I'm cutting out the short sleeve, and I forgot to make my pattern, so I'm adding seam allowances as I go, but this is not terribly difficult. I'm making 2 of them with the notches, and then I'm making my sleeveless top, and for the sleeveless version I'm making very few changes. So I'm basically copying the pattern up to the armhole and then changing the armhole slightly. For the front, I'm going a bit deeper, so I'm cutting out a bit more. I don't really want to change the shoulder that much. I might change it a centimeter, maybe 2 centimeters, because I don't want a vest. I don't want, or whatever the American equivalent is, wife beater. I don't want that. I want something that covers my shoulder. So what I'm doing for the front is I'm marking 2 centimeters, and 2 centimeters is the furthest I can go, and I'm sort of tapering it down again. This is the shape that I want. I'm going to use bands, that's why I'm doing that. So I'm going to pull it in slightly, and I can have this little gap, or in other words, I can hollow it in a bit more because my bands are going to pull the armhole in. So I am going to be covered. Well, you can see the vest, the t-shirt, whatever you want to call it, at the beginning of the video. And I think that is going to be enough, but I'm going to deepen my neckline a little bit, 1.5 centimeters. So that was the front, and now I can work on the back, and the back is changed even less. So again, I'm copying everything up to the armhole, and then shallowing, or well, deepening the armhole, but at the back I only want 1 centimeter, and I'm making sure that the shoulder seam is the same length as the front of my shoulder, so as the front pattern, but because I want to expose even less at the back, I'm just using 1 centimeter. Again, remembering that my bands are going to help and are going to pull it in slightly, but that's my back. It is slightly different than the front. This is going to be my underlayer, or something that I would wear for the gym, so I don't really think many people would like this sort of shape, but I like it, and it's useful because it covers enough, but it's breezy enough. And I'm comparing everything, so checking if the shoulder seam is the same length, if the top and the back are the same length all together, and I can start sewing. And this time I'm using clear elastic to stabilize my shoulders, and I'm stabilizing the shoulders in both tops, in both black tops. I'm placing the clear elastic at the back of the shoulder seam, and I'm sewing through 3 layers. You can do it on your domestic sewing machine. You can use a zigzag. It's not the easiest thing, but it's not difficult at all. If you practice once or twice, you are going to be fine. My clear elastic is 6 millimeters wide, and because clear elastic is quite easy to get tangled, I'm using a hairpin like that to keep it together, to make sure that it doesn't go everywhere. And again, I'm placing it at the back of my shoulder seam and sewing through 3 layers, so my back, my front, and the elastic. Then I'm sewing the side seams in both of my black tops. So I'm starting at the bottom, at the hem, and going up. And I'm doing it 4 times, so this is a mini batch sewing. I'm also sewing the side seams of my short sleeves, because I can do it at the same machine. I'm going to set my sleeves in because that's how I like to sew. Of course you can sew them flat and then sew the side seam together from the very bottom to the end to the sleeve hem, but I'm putting my sleeve inside the bodice, so right sides together, and I'm starting a few inches before my head of the sleeve starts. So I'm not starting at the head. I can start anywhere but not on the head. And I'm making sure that all the notches that I made match and that the side seams match. and I'm sewing in the round, making sure that the edges are even, that they're lined, and making sure that all the notches match, and making sure that the side seams match in the seam allowance. And it's done, and it looks like that, and it needs bands and it needs hemming of everything. I'm going to add my bands first, so I'm sewing the bands for the necklines of both tops and the bands for the sleeves of the sleeveless, or the armholes of the sleeveless top. And my bands are 20% shorter than the corresponding opening. I'm sewing the short side of the band first, then turning it to the right side, folding it in half, then placing each band inside of the opening, right sides together, and I'm starting a couple of centimeters or an inch before my seam. I'm matching the seams, you don't have to, but I'm matching the seams, and I'm starting just before the seam, making sure that the seams match, and then going in the round, making sure that everything is flat and everything is lined together. And I'm not pulling excessively, so I'm easing something into something else, but I'm not pulling excessively. And it looks like that all the bands are done, and it's pretty quick. So it is a very flimsy and very thin fabric, as you can see. I think it's about 120 grams per meter, and definitely not more. I think even less. I do the same with the bands for the sleeveless top, so I'm finishing my armholes with bands that are also 20% shorter, and again I'm matching all the seams and sewing in the round. And as you can see, I hope you can see, that everything I sew is flat, nothing is sort of hanging around, everything is flat, and it's very easy because I'm gently pulling on the band, very gently, and it kind of sews itself, and all the seams are matching, and I think it's perfect. And this fabric is going to be a magnet for my pet's hair, but tough. Okay, I'm going to show you the neckband sewn in again on this top, so on the sleeveless one, hoping that you will see everything I do even better. I know that the contrast is really bad, but I don't know what to do with it. Black and white don't really work with my camera. So I'm starting a few centimeters before my seam. I'm matching the halves of my neckband and my neck opening, and I'm letting the machine do its job. And now I can change the machines, and I'm going to cover stitch everything that I need to cover stitch. I'm starting with top stitching all my bands, so the neckband, the armhole bands in the sleeveless top, and then I'm going to hem both tops on the cover stitch machine. And yes, this is a really flimsy fabric, but it still works. I do it more by feeling with my fingers than anything else. I'm going to use the hemming guide for hemming, but that's later. And I'm happy with the result of my top stitching, so I'm going to top stitch even more. Everything needs to be top stitched. All my seam allowances are facing down, so towards my left hand. And when I go through the seams where I've got the joint, I kind of guide the fabric gently, and I can hem the first top. So I'm folding under 2.5 centimeters or an inch, and the guide is going to help me, but I still have to control the fabric. I'm going to hold it firmly in my hands, and again, when I go to the joint of the seams, I'm going to guide the fabric with my hand, so I'm lifting it a little bit. It's almost invisible, it's more how you feel it, and then the seams are perfect. And for the rest of the hem, I'm just following the guide. Don't forget to like the video if you haven't already. Also, when I hem, I usually use clips to mark any difficult points, some points where I have to be more careful, like the joints of my seams. And the hem is finished, and it looks like that. Of course, it does need a good iron. And now we can hem the sleeves. Because of my machine, I'm placing my sleeve facing me, but normally I would do it the other way around. And I'm just going in the round. This fabric is easy to feel, so I don't even have to look. I can feel it with my fingers, and I can go right, and it looks like that. And yes, of course, it does need a good iron. And finally, the second sleeve. These are short sleeves, so, well, hemming sleeves is relatively easy. And I always have my ruler with me, and I always check if it's still 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters. I need to be quite precise. And I'm just going in the round. My machine locks the stitches. For domestic machines, I've got a video how to start, how to finish cover stitching, so you can watch that. The hemming guide really helps, but you can learn to hem without a hemming guide. And it looks like that. And my t-shirt is done. And I'm going to say it again, it does need a good iron. Ironing is important because it sets the stitches in. They're going to look better after every wash. You do need to iron whatever you made. Okay, let's quickly make a circle skirt to create a dress. My fabric is folded like a French pancake, so I have 4 layers of fabric. That's why I'm not going to have side seams. If your fabric is not wide enough, so if you need a longer skirt, you'll need to cut 2 pieces of fabric folded once, and you need to add seam allowances to your calculations. My favorite formula for a circle skirt is waist circumference plus ease and seam allowances if needed, divided by 2 pi, and that gives me the radius of the small circle at the top that I've already drafted. So for example, for me it's going to be 66 centimeters of my waist divided by 2 times pi, which is, well, pi is 3.14, so 628, and that gives me 10.5 centimeters. But I'm taking away my seam allowance to have some negative ease, so I'm actually using 8.5 centimeters as the radius of my small circle, the one that is going to be the waist. And then I'm doing the compass motion for my hem, and my hem is as long as the fabric lets me, so 74 centimeters. That's with the hem allowance. That's just because it allows me to do that on this fabric. The fabric is 1 meter 50 centimeters wide, and I've got a skirt, and now I can attach it to my t-shirt that is cut just below my waist.